Hey, everybody. Thank you for checking out the Performance Anxiety Podcast on the Pantheon Podcast Network. My name is Mark, and I'm your host. And we go international this episode with Tone of Voice Orchestra's Trinelise Vaering. Her family enjoyed music when she was growing up, but it wasn't a career choice. She didn't even think about it after recording 2 jazz albums while in school studying architecture. But somehow, she wound up marrying a musician. And once she finally made the decision to focus on music, she decided she needed to find her own voice, and it wasn't going to be in jazz. So she completely changed her musical style, but lost a portion of her audience when she did it. It was also at this point that she decided to write exclusively in her native Danish. Speaking of Danish, I do a pretty good job of butchering the language in this episode, including getting several definitions wrong. That leads us to Trinelise's latest project, Tone of Voice Orchestra. She tells us the difference between her husband's fantasy of what the band would be and the reality of what it is. Somehow, they managed to get all 10 members together to record this album during the pandemic, and they'll be releasing even more music later on this year. Follow Trinelise and the group at Tone of Voice Orchestra on Instagram and Facebook. You can also check out Vaering.com, Vaering, for links to buy the album. Rate and review this podcast. Follow us at Performance ANX on the socials, and support is accepted via ko-fi.com at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety or performanceanx.threadless.com. Now let's get started with Trinelise Vaering of Tone of Voice Orchestra on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Okay, so I am Trinelise Vaering. I am one of 2 band leaders for Tone of Voice Orchestra, and we are a 10-piece outfit from Copenhagen, Denmark. Our self-titled album, Tone of Voice Orchestra, just came out in the middle of March, and this is 2022, I should mention. And we write music that is somehow genre fluid because we are inspired by a lot of stuff, from Americana to world music from different regions of the world, from Scandinavian roots, and we just blend it all together in our songs that also have kind of an unorthodox collection of instruments. We have hurdy-gurdy, bagpipe, violin, 4 singers, 2 drummers, double bass and saxophone. So I don't think you've ever heard anything like it. Actually, I'm quite sure you haven't. Yeah, and I'm so happy to be here on Performance Anxiety Podcast and be able to tell you about all this stuff that is really important to me.
Good morning or afternoon. I cannot.
Sammy, still hang on. Let me. Maybe now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. This is great.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And literally my pleasure, because I've listened to the album a lot, and it's so great.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. There's so many things, there's so many styles, and got a lot of questions. So
I'm so happy.
what I like to do to find out, to understand a little bit more about where you're at now professionally, I like to you kind of discover where you came from, how you started in this whole business. So what I usually like to start off with finding out about how you really kind of discovered music. Was there a lot of music growing up? Do you have any musical family members? How did you get interested in music in the first place?
My family was not a music family, and I had actually never been to a concert before I got to high school. So when I think of my own children who has been to like zillions of concerts with us, I mean, sitting under the piano or whatever, that's like a totally different thing. But I came to music via playing the guitar because I used to horseback ride a lot when I was little and a teenager. And as I think maybe, I don't know, 12 or something, some of the other girls horseback riding, they took guitar lessons. And so I went with them And I promised my mother that I would learn how to read music, because that was the only thing she could imagine was how to learn music. You have to learn to read music. And I mean, I do read music, but definitely not on the guitar. So, but that was a kind of my way into it. And the guitar teacher, she was really into letting not every student sitting for themselves playing the guitar, but she made up small ensembles. So she made ensembles with 2 men and 2 women, or girls, and whatever. Mm-hmm. And so we had the right amount of voices. That would be soprano, alto, tenor, and baritone. And so we could sing 4-part harmonies and play our little guitars. So I kind of came into that through. And one of these men that she made this little group out of was like 20 years older than I was, and he just had the perfect voice for that combination. And he was very into music and had a lot of vinyls, and had listened to a lot of American folk music and from the 60s, because he was older,
Right.
And so actually he's dead now, and I inherited a lot of his vinyls.
Wow.
He kind of introduced me to Americana, as a whole. And whenever somebody was here, he also took us to concerts. And, when I got to high school, there was a lot of concerts on the high school, and I was doing, high school bands, etc. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't for my family. I mean, it's not that they were music, that didn't like it, but it's like, I can remember 3 albums from my home, probably, that I know my mother and father listened to. So it was not a big thing.
Oh, wow. Okay. That always fascinates me when it goes the complete opposite. The family's not musical at all, and then one of the children that becomes their career. It's just such an interesting shift.
I think a lot of artists have kids that become artists just because of, it makes sense, I guess. From growing up, we didn't know a single person who was like a freelancer in any type. I mean, not a graphic designer or... So just the thing of not having a job and earning money, or your own company, that could be it. My father had his own little company, but that was just unheard of. And I couldn't imagine that you could make a living out of it. I will say, though, that is still a mystery to me, how we're actually up this far and still living. But and I went 6 years to architect school, actually, when I was, like in my 20s, because I couldn't imagine that this could, for real be a career, but it just kept resurfacing. And when I was still in architect school, I took leave for a year, and I went to New School in New York and studied there for a year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But then back to architect school, because I needed this education. I thought, I never used it for anything. So,
oh, no.
Well, music just keeps resurfacing in my life. And it's just such a passion for me. And it's grown, I will say, more and more intense with the years, that I'm just super obsessed with music, actually, with listening to new music, which you can also hear in Tone of Voice Orchestra, that from all the influences. That's because we are actually we're 2 band leaders, and we're just obsessed with music,
That is fantastic. I love that. I love it. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Try doing that in person. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself, because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to Performance Anxiety listeners: You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/performance-anxiety. That's betterhelp.com/performance-anxiety. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. When did you really start thinking about music as a profession then?
I was hoping all the time, I guess, because after high school, I started taking some singing lessons, but like I said, there was nobody in my there was somebody who had one friend that I played with in a high school band. His father was a professional musician. That was like the first person that I saw. And I thought, oh, they're making they're living from this. But then I met my husband really young, and we married when I was 21, and he was a professional musician.
Oh, wow.
So that and he's also the one that we have Tone of Voice Orchestra together.
Yeah.
So kind of looking at him, he's always played music, and his family has been more into music. And so looking at him, I was kind of still thinking I needed an education, but I was, just tuning myself into what it takes to actually, I was doing I made 2 albums while I was still in architect school. So it's not that I was not sort of working in a professional atmosphere, but I was just thinking that it couldn't happen as the only thing I did. But,
so were those your first 2 albums, the first 2 jazz albums that you had released?
Those came out while I was still in architect school. And every time I took a leave for 4 months to do them, so it dragged out because music was all the time slowing me down in the education. But
my God.
And I was always coming in late because I'd been out playing gigs at night. It's like really terrible.
Hey, so that's amazing. So you released 2 albums. So When I Close My Eyes and In So Many Words.
Actually, In So Many Words was after, but there was another album which was under band name People, Places, Times, and Faces, and actually one in Spanish that we did while I was also in. Well, that was on the way out. 2 albums, I think.
Okay, so was that Dos Mundos?
Dos Mundos came out. We did that as we were just the day more or less architect school finished. We did Dos Mundos. Yeah.
Wow.
You've been digging deep. If you realize.
I try.
Yeah, you've really been digging because that's kind of nowhere to be found.
Así se olvidan que hay que sufrir. Empanados y vino en jarra, una guitarra, bombo y violín, unas cuantas maltas pizarras.
That's amazing to me that because in my mind, if I'm making an album, but that's it. I'm a professional musician now. Screw architecture school. I'm done. So
have you been a professional all your life?
I was a photographer for years. So
there you go.
Yeah. Then I had kids and I had to get a real job.
Okay.
So now I just do photos on my own. I actually like to do live music photography. That's my favorite. That's my passion. So I kind of went the opposite way where I now do my passion as a hobby, and maybe I'll be able to get back into it once the kids are all in college. Which one of them is. So, hey, maybe before you know it. But
the thing is that we don't pay for college here. So you also have, I think, once you invest in kids, just having them, I guess you have this big economic looming thing in the future that you have to provide for that, which we don't.
Well, that is maybe,
Yeah,
and I went to college for photography. So it worked out for a decade or so. Were you playing a lot live when you were in architecture school and recording albums and all? Were you gigging a lot?
Yeah, not a lot because we're in the really insignificant corner of the world. To be honest, it's not so you can't. The tours are really short because the country is so small. So you can say yes, I was gigging, but compared to going on a tour in America, it's really short, and you can get back in your own bed after most gigs because it's so small. Maybe. I mean, that's a really.
I know a lot of musicians who would love that.
Yeah, I'm sure. We would just love to play longer tours, but we have toured in more countries in Europe, and I've even been as far as Australia on a tour once.
Wow.
There, of course, I couldn't go back in my own bed, but
yeah.
So it's really a dream for us to come to America, or possibly Canada is more obvious because of the visa thing. The visa thing is so crazy.
I keep hearing that.
Imagining how to get in there with a band is like
so expensive. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Were you writing your own music at this point in school?
Yeah. I've always been writing my own music.
Wow.
I actually remember I think this was before I played the guitar when I was 9 or 7 or something really small. And I was listening to, like the pop radio, and I was looking for instrumental tunes.
Okay.
And there was a One Shadow tune that came out, and I had my mother write me a lyric about horses because I was crazy about horses in English to this Shadow tune. And then I recorded it from the radio and put it out and turned it on. And then on another recorder, I would record my own voice with the Shadows coming out of the first radio.
Oh, wow.
So already there, I was kind of wanting to be a singer, with my own songs and stuff. And then from the time I had my guitar, I started writing songs. So I've been writing songs always.
Was jazz always a draw for you? Because the first 3 albums you did were definitely deeply rooted in jazz.
Yeah, it wasn't always, but I went to high school in the 80s. And if you remember the pop scene then, it was really, testosterone filled. And I mean, had I been 10 years older, so that I would have been going on in the 70s, I would have been a singer-songwriter because I love Janis Ian and all the singer-songwriters, Rick Lee Jones. But then came all that, big stadiums, a lot of reverb on the snare drums, and all this energy that
and big hair.
Big hair. And I just realized from some connections that I met that in the jazz arena, there were a lot of really nerdy guys who were not that occupied with this really loud and
the bombast,
this kind of vibe. It was more like invested in the music. And so I thought, that's kind of the vibe that I want to. So I was a singer-songwriter working with jazz musicians, but I didn't really sing like a jazz artist, as you could probably hear, even on the first albums.
My heart is firm but shakeable. It's hard and yet it's breakable. It's young, it's old, it's shy and bold. It twists and turns, yet never learns.
So it was like a jazz-inflected singer-songwriter-ish thing.
It's a hybrid.
And when I came to, this also came out of the year we had in New School, because before I went to New School, the jazz and contemporary department there, I thought I was really trying to be a jazz singer, and I studied all the jazz standouts, etc. But then when I came over, I just realized that will never be my history. I mean, these great Black singers from the 40s and 50s, and it's just a whole nother thing. So I would have to look for something that was where I could add something to a tradition rather than just, try to copy it. So that's why I kind of,
So is that why you had the big shift in style with the Trespassing album?
No, actually this recognition came before I made my first album, which is why I sing more, more straight and more singer-songwriter-ish than really trying to be a jazz singer. I was still having the jazz people around me. But then once we get to the Trespassing, and again, you've been doing your homework really well, I was sort of transferring into some sort of indie rock poppy thing, because I got, the jazz also has so many agendas that doesn't have to do with telling a story, singing a song. And so for every song that you make, you have to make room for improvisation, and you have to think about, are the chords good vehicles for the soloists? And I love the albums I did, and I love the musicians I played with, because they were really, really good, and they helped me out becoming a better musician. But I also felt at some time that my songwriting was more important than everybody else having a solo on my material.
That makes sense. I can get
So
that.
I was sort of slightly moving on that way, down that road.
The jazz stuff is beautiful. I mean, I love The Sacred and the Forlorn. I absolutely love that song.
But are you there? Do you care at all? Oh, but Simon says walk on ahead, whether you're sighted or you're blind. I ran the best I could, but they passed me on the line. But they doubt the sacred, put their trust in the forlorn. They doubt the sacred, put their trust in the forlorn. They doubt the sacred, put their trust.
And then Trespassing comes out, and it's definitely a lot more rock-oriented, guitar-oriented.
Yeah.
And the songs are a little bit, shorter because the jazzy songs were longer. I guess maybe because everybody wanted a solo.
Also because the time the time was there. You could make tunes of 7 minutes. There wasn't any streaming going on, and it was not. Didn't think of airplay as much. It was like more songs had suite forms because, that was people had the time for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Not now when I'm listening to it.
Point.
The other one you mentioned, Dos Mundos. When I listen to that, I'm thinking, why is there a bass intro so long? I just can't imagine it. Why? But at the time, it seemed perfectly normal.
It's what you feel at the time, If it fit at the time, it's each album is just a snapshot of where you were at that point.
Yeah,
so.
Sure.
But I've listened to Trespassing, and I absolutely love Just Another Little Girl. That was, oh man, that's a great song.
No way, the girl is the woman I am. Oh no, you got it all wrong, but I'm giving you another go to take the wool from your eyes. Visit Earth, get our watches synchronized. Just another little girl with a pretty dress and a dirty mind, if that's all you see. Really missing
That was
out.
actually inspired by Alanis Morissette at the time.
Oh, really?
In the 90s, yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm always thinking of her when I sing it. And also something about the melody that comes out of that. She was kind of an eye-opener for me because she was angry.
Yeah.
And which was probably also why I wanted to do something other than, piano trio is really elegant. I wanted to do something that had a little bit more anger in it because I was a little bit pissed.
Yeah. Well, that comes across for sure.
Yeah. So that was that change that came about at that time.
Were you touring a lot at that point? Because I almost want to say because it was a whole new set of musicians you were working with, but it was still everything was under your name.
Yeah, I was touring the most when I did the second of the one called In So Many Words. That album we toured a lot all over Europe. So when I changed style, I kind of lost a bit of my audience, and it was a little bit. That was a transition. We still played jazz clubs, but they thought we were very loud. And then, as you see, the album. There was a break there after that album where I really had to decide what to do, and then I left everything. Took the word jazz out of all my press releases, and started playing the electric guitar myself, and just. And switched also language and started writing in my native tongue, Danish. So I hit a wall, I guess, with the Trespassing. I had really good reviews and people welcoming me on this other arena, but the audience was just, oh, she's the jazz singer. We're not coming, so it was difficult.
You already said
myself.
Yeah, you set an expectation and people weren't prepared for it, I guess.
No. So even like radio, this is the time when radio became more of a thing, and so it's like, we know what you're about. Why don't you call the jazz channel? And I'm like, the jazz channel don't think this is jazz. It's like it's still actually an issue for me. And
really?
Yeah, it is because I still do projects with jazz musicians and stuff. So there's still a lot of people who think I am the jazz singer because
Wow.
my 2 first albums were so big.
Man, I hate that you get pigeonholed like that because
Yes, it's
people are
super
missing out on.
irritating.
Yeah, people get missing out on some great music, and
Yeah.
I don't want to murder the Danish language here, so I'm not. I'm trying. I want to talk a little, ask you some questions, but I know I'm going to butcher these titles, so I'm going to do my best. So please forgive me.
Yeah.
I have a couple that are. I think the titles I may have translated into English, but is it Lutefisker?
Lystfisker.
Lutefisker. Okay, that was
Yeah.
close. I love that album. I
Oh,
can't
I'm so
understand a
glad.
word you're saying, but there's the song Miss Lude.
Miss Lou, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
That song has been stuck in my head, and it's almost frustrating because I can't sing it to to go along with what's in my head. I can hear it in my head, and I'm like, but so it's just stuck in my head, and it's not going anywhere.
Miss Lou, men jeg blev nødt til at gøre det, for jeg går til livet, som en kamikaze-pilot. Først synes du jeg var dejlig, men nu er jeg bare en kæmpe idiot. Miss Lou.
But I love that song. That whole album just kicks ass. It's pretty. It's a lot heavier than I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest with you. When I see the entire album in Danish, I'm like, all right. I don't know if I was falling into the trap of expecting it to be more jazzy, but
Yeah.
I love it. It's amazing how a song you can't understand in a completely different language can get stuck in your head.
I'm glad you say that because, yeah, I think at the time I really felt I had to be very clear that this was not jazz. So that's why it's sort of, I'm taking every jazz thing out of it. There could be even some songs that I've written that had a little bit more jazzy chords. I was like, no, that can't go.
Wow.
And also just writing more on guitar gives you a different sound and different chords because it's more easy on a piano to kind of move your fingers about and just stuff chords in there, where guitar you can stand a while with the same chord and going blah blah.
Yeah.
So you write different songs, and also just a change of language because I hadn't written in Danish since I was like really really young, and when I was really really young I only listened to pop music, so probably also just switching language also made the transition in just tapping into another area of music for me.
So was it in your own head you were thinking this is going to be more poppy because I'm writing in my native language?
Well, just because I think the music I heard in my native tongue was more poppy.
Right.
So it wasn't like I'm thinking I have to make, I think it just came with the territory more or less of speaking my own tongue. There isn't any jazz in Danish more or less in this area either. So I guess the jazz just made a lot of sense to write in English, and I actually still love to write in English, as you can see on Tone of Voice Orchestra.
Yeah.
And I had another band called Offbeskoers where I also wrote in English. So it's not that I like both. It's just different.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about socks for a second. Why not? It's a music podcast. But I tried a pair of socks from Boldfoot and loved them. I've only worn them once because my kids have stolen them. So in my household, that's the best endorsement I can give. And I guess it's fitting because the design I chose was jailbird. The design I chose was jailbird. I might keep that in. The socks are 100% American made, and 5% of all proceeds go to veteran charities. It makes sense, seeing that Boldfoot is a family and veteran-owned company. They have a huge variety of styles. So check out boldfoot.com and buy some of the best socks you've ever slapped on your feet. And help veterans while you're at it. That's boldfoot.com. And so the album after that, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this one. I think it translates to rude.
No, it's actually an augmentative. That it doesn't mean anything in itself, but it's something you put in front of anything. If you say umanerlig good, then it means really good. It's just like real. It's like kind of something that whatever comes after it becomes more.
It's more of an adjective.
Yeah, it's it's augments. Yeah, augmentative. It's kind of like really. If I say really good.
Okay. Okay. Is that the first album that features your husband that you've recorded, or was he in the background and in the other stuff too?
There was no horns on Lystfisker, but in the jazz albums there were. When there are horns, and if there's a saxophone, it's him. But they are not saxophone on all just on some songs, and I think also just on 2 songs actually on Umanerlig.
Okay.
But the when I was really young, the very first album I did was with him, and then the Dos Mundos you mentioned was with him. So we've done like every 10 years we've done an album or a project. And then when the kids were small, it was just too difficult to tour together. So there was like 15 years where we didn't do anything, or 10 years, and then we started doing things more regularly again because we could travel and.
Okay. Yeah. And let's see. So you released albums on a pretty consistent basis from 95 through 2011. But then there was a 7-year gap until your next LP came out. But were you focused on the Oh Purity project for that whole time? Or was there anything else going on? Because I like that Oh Purity.
Yeah, I think that's the Baroque ensemble I was working with. And we modern music, but with Baroque instruments.
Yes, I love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Still, we agreed on the suspension of reality. I was an innocent bystander, drawn to the magic of your epicenter. I was an innocent bystander, drawn to the magic of your epicenter.
I think we were doing off-piece gurus at that time also.
Okay.
That's 2010 and 2016, I think. So that was Frederick's, and that was our together project, the first coming out of the time when the kids were small, when we couldn't tour together. So we did off-piece gurus after that. So I more or less like I haven't actually looked at my albums and seen the years, so I can't remember, but it feels like I've been pretty consistently working on something.
Let's see. Okay, so we got releases in 96, 97, 2000, 2003, 08, 2011, and then I can't even, I'm not going to pronounce this one. In 2018.
Du går ind ad en dør.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, that band, I still have that band, and we have toured a lot with that one. And we're doing another one. Actually, in June, we'll start recording another one. In that band, that is like my own band, but Frederick is playing there's a horn section, and he's in there. But it's my decisions, everything.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. You get to tell him what to do.
Yeah. I really love that. No, it's like when we work together, like we do in Tone of Voice Orchestra, we write together, and we have to kind of compromise, but in a good way. But we have to make compromises. But in our own bands, we just, that's my band, and he's just a side man.
Okay. I wanted to just ask you a little bit about the Oh Purity project. What was that whole project about? Because there was a film that went along with that, I believe.
Yeah. It's more like a film, actually, because it's only out digitally as an EP.
Okay.
But the film is on YouTube. Anybody want to watch it, with English subtitles, and the lyrics are in English. And that was a collaboration with a Norwegian Baroque ensemble and a Swedish pianist that I knew. We wrote the songs together, him and I, and arranged them. And then, it started out as a project, just like Tone of Voice Orchestra started out as a project that kind of, you want to do more of this. And then I found a young girl who just came out of film school, and she did the sort of the concert movie that we did for it.
Okay.
Which we sold to some TV stations, and the national TV here paid, helped us realize it. But we just decided in the end that since we were never going to play a lot of gigs, because there's this big orchestra and people from, I think, 7 countries, it was like crazy. Wow. So we just thought we meet up and do this, and then this thing is in the world as a documentary, and people can hear these wonderful instruments playing modern music instead of only playing Baroque music.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I was fascinated by that. I thought the music was beautiful. I loved it. I mean,
Thank you.
Innocent Bystander was great, but I think It Wasn't You broke my heart. That song was just, oh my gosh, the lyrics, the music, everything. It just, I just sat there listening to it and it just absolutely broke my heart.
It wasn't you I was infatuated by. It wasn't you on the pillow next to mine. It wasn't your shoulder that I rested on. No, you were not the one. You were not the one.
So well done.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Tone of Voice Orchestra is a large band. I mean, there's 10 people in it.
Yeah.
How did that whole idea get started? Was that just something that you and Frederick wanted to put together, or was there something else behind it?
Frederick was an artist in residence at a little club here, and that meant that every Monday that month he could present something like 25 minutes of something new that he just wanted to try out.
Okay.
And he had just met up with, just by accident, I think, met some 2 young musicians from the folk scene here that we don't interact with a lot. There's like, we don't know them, they don't know us. And I don't think there's any connection between he's a jazz musician still, and with the jazz and folk, it's just, but we just realized that they have the same sort of type of musicianship that jazz musicians have, that they're really good at their instrument and they're kind of nerdy. It's not a commercial kind of music, and they have a standard repertoire that, really big standard repertoire that they have to know, and they can improvise.
Okay.
And so Frederick used them for some theater music that he wrote, and just thought it would be fun to do something with them. And then that was one thing that kind of went into it. And the other one was that he had heard an album with a Canadian band called Bruce Peninsula. I don't know if you know that one.
I've heard of it, but I haven't listened.
One of their albums is like this man singing, and then there's a choir of women answering all the time. Not all the time, but that's kind of, and they were 2 drummers.
Okay.
And so Frederick has also had another band of his own with 2 drummers. So he's always liked that broad beat that comes out of that. And so now we're 2 drummers and the folk musicians, and he wanted ladies answering him. That I think what his picture was of, his imagination was he would be playing the saxophone and there'll be 4 girls answering. That's not how it happened after that, but that was his picture of it. And so we went out and handpicked some singers that we felt we didn't want like jazz singers because they have too much of a personalized sound. It has to be a little bit more like Eastern European, straight or no, or Scandinavian in the sound. So we found some girls that have worked also in world music with a different kind of sound. And so made this one project where we wrote 6 songs together, and just that was kind of I think I said to somebody that it was like a gateway drug for more. We really had to do it again, and so it just took a long time to find out. Then we did a live stream concert after like a workshop a year after. That was the first time all 10 could meet.
Oh wow.
And since then some people couldn't do it and some other people came in, and it's just been like a long process. And then COVID we were just getting started and had played like 5 concerts or something, and then COVID came, and we thought, okay, so we just have to focus on getting an album made. And even that was difficult during this lockdown and stuff, because we're more people than we could actually fit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. How so you and Frederick are writing all the music and the lyrics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you getting this all done with 10 people? Because I'm not exactly sure how it was in Denmark, but I know here we couldn't. At certain times during this whole thing, you couldn't have more than like 6 people in
same
an area.
Here.
So,
but the thing is, that was in public areas. Nobody could actually prohibit you to be more in your private home. People were not. I mean, there were times when you were totally isolated and you couldn't go out.
Yeah.
But there was still this was a little. We had to kind of move the time when we were recording. Twice we moved it and we split it up in two. But at the time, you could not be 10 people together if you were standing in the street. But if you're, and then we checked out that the studio was actually a private owned property, so they couldn't actually tell us not to be there. And then we took tests every morning. We went by and took a test before we came.
Okay.
And if people were too much in contact with their kids or wives, they would sleep in separate rooms while we were doing it because, their wives and kids didn't want to, risk.
Just for safety, yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of a every day the phone rang on the way to the studio. We were like, oh, now somebody's sick. And you had to wait, I think, half an hour to get your results. And everybody was standing outside the door waiting to go in to know if they had. And there was, also a technician and a producer. So we were a lot more than 10 people. And the video people came in one day. And
oh, my God.
It was just a big mess. But we actually got it done. I don't think if the police had actually showed up, maybe they would have, I don't know. Yeah, we got it done. Don't tell anyone.
No. Oh, no, nobody's going to listen to this, so don't worry about it. One of the things that I like is that the songs are so varied in styles. But you're talking about things that always kind of catch me off guard. I don't want to say talking about them, but you mention things that always kind of catch me off guard when I hear them in music, especially music that is a little, not pop music per se. If it was like a boy band singing about the internet, texting, and Netflix, I'd expect it. But more sophisticated music, my brain wasn't prepared to hear something about a song about texting and Netflix. And it was just kind of funny. Some of those things just kind of caught me. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Particularly, I like that rhyme a lot because sometimes you think, oh, I am the first one to use this word in a song. I don't know whether I am. Yeah. Probably somebody else might have said Netflix. It's sex rhymes with Netflix. Yeah. In that particular. Yeah. But I had the feeling I've never heard a song with Netflix in it.
I don't think I have either.
So maybe I am the first. I'm kind of collecting these first words. I've always done that. Also, when I write in Danish, I'm thinking, I am the first one to use this one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's not me singing that song. That's one of the other singers who has the lead in that one. And she actually said to me, I'm not going to say that. I can't say this was sex and Netflix. And I'm saying, I had to really put up a good argument to make her
go
with it. Because she texted me from the train after the first time we sang it. And I really love this song, but I can't do that. I can't say that. And I'm like, come on, it's such a cool rhyme.
It is. It's okay. I mean, it's stuck in my head.
Now we go back and forth between having sex and watching our favorite miniseries on Netflix. Let the good times roll. We put the world on hold.
Yeah.
And I mentioned before that the styles are so varied. I mean, for example, the first single, Heartless, it's kind of musically it's jazzy, but the vocals have this like Middle Eastern, North African feel to it, and I love it so much. But then you go to He Loves Her For It, which is probably the sexiest jazzy folk song I've ever heard.
He loves her for it, and she lets him have it. He loves her for it, the way she lets him have it.
I can't hear the jazz when you say jazz. It's because probably I'm grown up with the jazz thing. I can't hear it anymore when people say it's in there. I'm like, what? Yeah.
And my lack of
listen.
Well, my lack of knowledge of jazz, and my knowledge of jazz is very basic, and so that's probably where it's coming from.
Somebody thinks that a lot of people actually thinks it's jazz because they hear the tenor saxophone, because they relate that instrument so much to jazz.
That might be it.
So as soon as there is a jazz tenor solo, then they think, it's jazz, because the chorus sequences and the grooves are not at all in the jazz kind of, but because of the tenor, I think, and the improvising bit, then that comes, I think that's why.
See, that's probably it. I need to get a little more educated in jazz for sure.
No, I mean, don't do that. It's cool. It's just that, for me, it's like there is a bagpipe that takes out all my, that's why I think of it as world music, that one. Those two songs, I think, are more like world, or maybe a world fusion sort of.
Okay.
But I mean, who cares? Yeah. It's really not important.
They're great songs, whatever they are.
It's just that we have decided for ourselves that writing these songs, we could take anything that we found was, inspiring. And then since, when we write music, each on our own, Frederick writes jazz music, and I am like a more singer-songwriter with some sort of Americana elements in it. Then we're more into our genre, but when we have to find somewhere to meet, it has to be somewhere in between genres. So everything that we've done together has been this sort of somewhere in between stuff, because that's where we can meet.
It's fascinating to me. Barking up the wrong tree. It's like if an R&B song was written in the Middle Ages. I love it.
Oh, that's such a good, that's a really cool description. Yeah.
You're barking up the wrong tree. Your eyes say what's it gonna be, but love's not in the cards for me, and you're gonna wanna give up eventually. You're gonna walk in to impress me, smooth talking since you met me. I see you're on a roll. I'll tell you what.
And the thing is, that song, Frederick, he generally does we write these songs from the bottom up. So he's made sort of a groove and sort of a vibe with the hurdy-gurdy thing. That's probably why you get this Middle Ages feeling of the hurdy-gurdy.
Yes.
And when I got to it, I was so focused on the groove that I thought, it's kind of an urban feel. So I did that R&B hook line. And then Frederick came back and did something with the violin and the soprano. And that is, in his mind, he was in Latin America writing on the, the Argentinian feeling.
Yeah.
And when you hear that, the instrumental part, you can hear, that's a part of it. But I stayed in that R&B mode. So when I came back and did the verses, I was kind of, because of the hurdy-gurdy, which is a drone instrument, you can't move chords very much. It's kind of a really steady thing. And I had the R&B hook line there. I was like thinking for myself that I would be rapping, so I was chain rhyming.
Yeah.
And when I explained it to my kids, they say, "You're not rapping, Mom." But in my mind, I am rapping with a little melody on top. But so we just kind of, because we don't, for this particular song anyway, we didn't kind of explicitly say to each other, we're doing this or that. Just like one did a part and one did a part and one did a part. So it kind of just had these two flavors in it.
It worked great. I don't know. I can't stop listening to this stuff. It's awesome. And the harmonies in That Kind of Day. They're so beautiful. I listened to that. I actually listened to that several times in a row just because I just love the vocals, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So you've played these songs live.
Yeah.
Is there a song that's kind of difficult to play, or one that you just kind of avoid because it's a little hard to pull off live?
Well, we can play all of them, and we actually have a like six songs more than this.
Oh wow!
So because this is only like one album, so we're going to do a deluxe album in the fall, I think, sometime with the extended versions of 4 of them, and then we have an extra song, maybe 2.
Oh, that is awesome! Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for that. So this is kind of grown from a one-off, maybe like a kind of a one-off project into more of an actual band than the long-term thing. That's awesome. Oh, do you guys plan to tour a lot over the spring and summer? Because a lot of this music sounds like it's perfect for spring and summer, like Lovey Dovey.
Yeah, Lovey Dovey is a summer song. Yeah, that's a little video for that one that we took in July last year, and that's just where we also took the cover of the album. So it's like the cover come live. And that really is a summer and spring. But I don't know actually, because the album was out just came out, and that was a little late for booking summer festivals. And before the album came out with all the good reviews, it was a little bit difficult to persuade anybody that a 10-piece band was something they actually needed, with bagpipe and hurdy-gurdy.
Yeah, I can see that.
So we just toured a little bit. We just did like 7 gigs, and we're going to do, I think, 3 or 4 over summer, and then we're going to tour again in the fall, and then hopefully a lot in 2023, because now we have all the good things written about us.
Yeah.
And also there's a little bit of a difficult time here now, because these summer festivals last year were canceled.
Yeah.
So they owe the people they canceled last year. So
that's
coming up it's a little bit crowded.
Yeah, I can imagine.
This year is special, because. Yeah,
even here in the States, I mean, there's a lot of people who are redeeming tickets they bought 2 years ago for shows that never happened. Yeah. So,
but everybody is going on tour now. I can see that on Instagram, that every American artist I know now seems to be going on tour.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And I live just outside of Washington, D.C., so there's a lot of places. There's shows going all the time. It's insane. It's amazing. It is great because we missed it. But
does people go out and watch the shows now, or are still people staying at home afraid to get sick? Or
the shows that I've been to, they've been pretty full. So there's been a great response. Even the smaller clubs that I kind of expected there to be, a dozen people at, were pretty full. Maybe 100 people instead of the 10 to 20 that I've kind of were figuring would show up. So I think everybody around here is they're really
hungry.
Exactly. Yeah. And so with a lot of the restrictions lifted, no masks anymore, and stuff, a lot of places they're stopping this whole proof of vaccination, and also people just going. So
that's nice.
Yeah, it's
the world has to restart.
It does. Yeah, we have to have some kind of normalcy again. Otherwise, things are just going to get real bad. But actually,
I've been thinking about the lockdown, and I think a lot of good stuff came out of it too. Not financially, of course, but just the thing that everything stopped, and you kind of had to think about what you really wanted to do, and there was a lot of quiet times for writing music, and no stress about reading that everybody else was on tour while you were just at home. But because everybody else was at home too, so you could just sit back and write your songs. And also the thing that you and I are doing this now, that couldn't have happened before COVID, because we didn't do Zoom, and we did. We could, but we didn't do it, and just it seemed like everybody who was so far away came closer.
That's very true. And I started this podcast about 2.5, 3 years ago, and this is how I do all of the episodes, but you had to kind of convince people to do it this way.
Yeah.
And now this is the way people do a lot of things. I mean, the company I work for, I was considered an essential worker. So through the whole pandemic, I drove 45 minutes to work every day.
Oh, did that. Yeah.
So, because I can't do my job from home. It's impossible. But I'd say 75% of the company I work for just worked from home. They set everybody up with microphones, and they had their laptops, and they could just do everything from home. And I think that got a lot of people more comfortable with doing these kind of interviews because they had to get work done. Everything had to be done through some kind of conference call. So help my podcast out.
Still actually people, I mean, they've learned that, I mean, the employers have learned that the employees work as much from home. So I just talked to the woman from my bank yesterday, and she said that she worked from home 2 days a week now, just because. Yeah.
My wife, she works for a bank here, and she still works 5 days a week from the house.
Yeah. So I mean, we learned something. It's always good to have a little things shaken and stirred a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Just, you know.
Yeah, but now we have a huge building that's like half empty. So I don't know.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's above my pay grade. I don't have to worry about that, though.
But some good things came out of it. And I have this really sweet story about a singer-songwriter from Perth in Australia, Carla Geneva. I don't know how she pronounces her name.
Okay.
But she actually came out with an album yesterday, I think. Oh. But anyway, at that time, I found a song of hers on YouTube, and I showed it to my daughter, and she said, I want to play that guitar song. And we thought she was really, it was an electric guitar, and she was really cool. And we Googled and saw if there was a how-to video anywhere. There wasn't. So my daughter just wrote to her on Instagram, hey, Carla, I love your song. Is there a how-to video somewhere? And this girl, she just said, oh, no, but hang on, Mercedes. That's the name of my daughter. And then she sat down on her phone from Perth, Australia, and made a how-to video for my daughter and said, hi, Mercedes, this is how I do.
Wow.
That was the beginning of COVID for me. And that kind of put everything in a different light for me. This one person at the other end of the world who just took the time to make a video for my daughter, who was, that was so sweet.
That is amazing. Oh, I love an artist who will do something like that. That's just... Yeah,
probably if it was now, she would be too busy, or just like Denmark would seem far away. But now, I mean, had my daughter been in like 2 houses down the road or in Denmark on the other side of the planet, didn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful story. That kind of restores some faith in people.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
The last thing I want to mention is the song Typecast. Mm-hmm. I like that. That song is so smartly written.
Typecast for the role of daughter, wife, and mother. Always someone else's other. Typecast for the role of daughter, wife, and mother. Always someone else, always someone other than myself.
And even lyrically, it's kind of a bit of a angry song, but it's still kind of bright and sunny with that goes along with the rest of the album.
It's not actually angry. It's just like, it's a little, I'm thinking it's like the air hostess, she's really kind, but if you mess with her, she's probably just going to spill your drink in your lap.
Yeah.
That's the kind of way I'm thinking when we sing it.
Right. Okay. That's a better way to describe it. Yeah. But it goes along with the rest of the album that's an upbeat, sunny spring, summer type of album. It's great.
The lyric of that song is, I would say, is sort of a feminist statement, about all the different arenas that women are supposed to navigate comfortably. And if you don't, if you're not a good, and that there's some kind of roles that we're just supposed to come natural, but doesn't always.
Yeah. And
it comes with the territory of writing lyrics to 4 adult women in the same band, and it has to be in all our mouths, that it has to be lyrics that deal with, or most often I write lyrics that deal with the feminine perspective of how the world looks, because it comes from, there's an empowering feeling of being 4 women singing together. I've always been singing alone, in all my own projects, and I've been, looking, into myself, and it's been like state of mind songs, but that makes no sense if you're, 4 women singing together. Okay. So, yeah.
I've really, really enjoyed the chat, the album, everything, and I've kept you for quite a while here. And I want to thank you for. We've been at it almost an hour already. Thank you so much. Where can people find the album? How can they pick it up or stream it?
It's on all the regular streaming services under Tone of Voice Orchestra. And then, of course, Bandcamp if you want to have a vinyl or a CD, or just, of course, downloads. But that's awesome. Or from my website, I send it to everywhere in the world.
There you go.
Yeah.
Is there a social media presence for the band?
Yes, we have Instagram and Facebook. We don't have actually Twitter because we don't use that much in this. I
hate Twitter.
This part of the world. So only journalists do it, and they do it because they want to follow American journalists. But
right.
So I don't have a presence there, but sure, Facebook and Instagram, we're there.
Excellent. I don't like Twitter either. If I didn't have to promote the podcast with it, I probably wouldn't have it. The social media, is the Instagram at Tone of Voice Orchestra, or is it a different handle?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a Tone of Voice. I think there's if you write Tone of Voice Orchestra in this, where you search for things, then we'll come up.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's a whole lot of you guys there.
No, they're definitely not. We even have our own hashtag, nobody took it. Yeah, I have my own page, of course, also, because I write a lot about music. I review music for different magazines, platforms, and I point out like album of the week every week. So I have my own kind of Instagram also where I do all my talk about music stuff and all the things I am enthusiastic about. And but Tone of Voice Orchestra is only for Tone of Voice Orchestra.
So what's your other Instagram handle then? It's
wait a minute, I actually have to look it up because I can't remember. I'm Trinelise Vaering, but Vaering is, I can't remember let me just look it up for you here. My Instagram handle is just Trinelise Vaering, and Vaering is with a 1 V, not double U, but what is it called?
Just the V?
Vaering.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been wonderful. And we'll talk to you soon.
Soon. Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.